Hello, good morning. This is BBC News with me, Ben Brown. Our headlines. The Queen returns to Windsor Castle after spending Wednesday night in hospital for what Buckingham Palace says were preliminary checks. The actor Alec Baldwin has shot dead a cinematographer and seriously injured the director on the set of his new film in an incident involving a prop gun. We'll be talking to a film director who knew the woman who's died. England's care watchdog warns there will be a tsunami of people without the care they need this winter unless a staff shortage is tackled. The care minister admits that staffing is a worry.
This has been a workforce that's under incredible pressure, but of course that is intensified at this time, particularly as we have 1.1 million vacancies. There's a lot of competition for labour, so it is a worry.
The assisted dying bill, which would allow terminally ill patients to seek assistance to end their lives, will have its second reading in Parliament today. In cricket, Scotland are through to the main draw of the T20 World Cup for the first time in their history after comfortably beating Oman by 8 wickets.
Hello, my name's Ed. When I was little, I had a stutter.
And coming up this hour, Ed Sheeran will be following stars like Dolly Parton, Tom Hardy and Orlando Bloom and reading a CBeebies bedtime story with a book about a boy who has a stutter. Hello, good morning. Buckingham Palace says the Queen is back at Windsor Castle and in good spirits after spending a night in hospital for what are described as preliminary medical checks. The 95-year-old monarch was said to have been disappointed after being forced to cancel a visit to Northern Ireland earlier on this week. Her hospital admission was not related to coronavirus. This report from our royal correspondent Sarah Campbell.
It was the day after hosting this reception at Windsor Castle that Buckingham Palace announced that, on medical advice, the Queen wouldn't be travelling to Northern Ireland on Wednesday afternoon. She'd been advised to rest for the next few days, but was in good spirits. It's now emerged that later that day, the Queen was driven to King Edward VII Hospital in central London to undertake what have been termed preliminary investigations. No details have been released as to exactly what the tests were for. What has been made known is this was not COVID-related. The Queen has undertaken a very busy schedule recently. She attended a service at Westminster Abbey a week last Tuesday and was seen using a walking stick for the first time at a public event. 2 days later, she was in Cardiff for the opening of the Welsh Parliament. And in between time, she was carrying out duties at Windsor Castle, including virtually welcoming the new Governor-General of New Zealand. The images of the Queen since her return from the summer break in Balmoral have been of an engaged and alert monarch, still enjoying meeting people and carrying out her duties with enthusiasm. But she is now 95 years old, and the news that she's spent a rare night in hospital will inevitably cause concern. The palace have sought to reassure. She's said to be in good spirits, and it's understood that on her return from hospital yesterday afternoon, she was back at her desk and back at work. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Well, our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell has been telling us that Buckingham Palace hasn't always been clear about what has been happening with the Queen.
Officials at Buckingham Palace have not been giving us a complete, reasonable picture of what has been occurring. The media was led to believe on Wednesday that the Queen was resting at Windsor Castle. That's what we, the BBC, reported, and other branches of the media reported to our viewers, listeners and readers. In point of fact, she was being brought into a hospital in central London for these preliminary investigations. Now, one can understand the palace's point of view. It is that the Queen is entitled to medical confidentiality, to patient privacy, notwithstanding that she's the head of state and millions of people here and around the world will be concerned to know that she is all right. quite how the palace can have believed that they would have got away with it, as it were, bringing her into a central London hospital, okay, a private hospital, but with all the people who would have known what was happening. And of course, they were smoked out last night by the Sun newspaper, which reported that she had been brought into hospital. Now, here, it seems to me, is the problem. Rumours and misinformation proliferate, thrive, when there is an absence of good, proportionate, trustworthy information. And I think that is what the media will be feeling this morning. Now, we are told last night by Buckingham Palace that she's back at her desk undertaking light duties and that she's in good spirits, that handy phrase that the palace dusts off at moments such as this. And we must hope that we can rely on what the palace is now telling us.
Nicholas Witchell there, our royal correspondent. A woman has died and a man has been injured after the Hollywood film star Alec Baldwin fired a prop gun on the film set in the United States. Police in New Mexico said Mr. Baldwin discharged the weapon during filming for the 19th century western Rust. Well, filming had been taking place on a small ranch, which is a popular location for movie productions in the desert close to the city of Santa Fe in central New Mexico. The woman who has died has been named as 42-year-old Halyna Hutchins, originally from Ukraine. She was working as the director of photography on the film, and the biography on her website says she was selected as one of American cinematographers' rising stars of 2019. Well, from Los Angeles, our correspondent David Willis sent us more details.
Well, according to the Santa Fe, New Mexico Sheriff's Department, 2 people were shot on the set of the Western film called Rust. In an initial statement, the Sheriff's Department said that officers were dispatched to the film set shortly after 2 o'clock in the afternoon local time, following a report that someone had been shot. And they later confirmed that 2 people had been shot when a firearm that was discharged by Alec Baldwin went off, striking the 42-year-old cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. She was airlifted to hospital but later died at the scene because of her injuries. And the film's 48-year-old director, Joel Souza. Now, he was wounded and is being treated in hospital. It's said that his injuries are critical. A statement from the production team confirmed that the incident involved the misfire of a prop gun and said that an investigation was underway. Now, Alec Baldwin is both the star and the producer of Rust, which is an independent film, and it's based on the story of the Western outlaw Harland Rust. Production of the film has now been halted. Detectives are interviewing witnesses at the scene. The International Cinematographers Guild confirmed Halyna Hutchins' death and called it in a statement devastating news. We are supporting a full investigation into this tragic event. This is a terrible loss, and we mourn the passing of a member of our guild's family. So far, there has been no word on this incident from Alec Baldwin or any of his representatives.
David Willis reporting there. Well, Halyna Hutchins was director of photography on the 2020 action film Arch Enemy, and we can talk to its director, Adam Egypt Mortimer, who joins us now. Adam, thank you very much for being with us. What is your reaction to this terrible news?
Thanks for having me. I mean, it's really unbelievable. Halyna was an incredible artist who, was really just starting a career that I think people were going to really start to notice. And the fact that she would be killed on a set in an accident like this it's unfathomable. Everybody I've spoken to out here in LA, as we've been hearing the news today, it just seems inconceivable, the level of protocol and safety that we tend to have on any production of any size. When you get down to handling weapons, when you get down to handling guns, it's so involved that the fact that a gun went off and killed Halyna is both shocking from an industry point of view and just absolutely tragic from the point of view of knowing this amazing artist who is suddenly not with us.
And we don't have many details, but have you got any idea how something like this could have happened?
I don't. It's hard for me to speculate on it. It's more a sense of not being able to understand how it could happen, because generally what takes place is if you have a weapon, if you have a gun that's capable of discharging anything, the number of people who are allowed to touch it or in control of it is very, very small and specific. And generally there would be somebody whose job is to make sure that it's safe and nobody else is going to handle it before it goes into the actor's hands. And when Helena and I made a movie last year that had a fair amount of gunplay in it, and our guns didn't even actually fire anything out of them. They were, sort of designed or broken in a way so they wouldn't work. And we would still have multiple sets of hands checking them. And even at the last stage of anything, the actor himself would open it up and take a look at it. And everybody was always checking to make sure that there was no way anything could be fired out of it. So that's what I mean when I say it's a bit inconceivable. And though I don't want to speculate on how this specifically could have happened, and I think we're all hoping to see like a really close investigation, it seems that something incredibly sloppy must have taken place. There was just a complete lack of care at the moment when there needed to be the most care.
And just tell us a bit more about Helena, who, as you say, you worked with as a cinematographer and as a person.
Yeah, she was really brilliant as a cinematographer. The one of the funny things about her to me was that I met her before I'd seen any of her work. I met her at a film festival, and within just a few moments of talking to her, I felt like she had such a strong vibe, such a sense of commitment to art and like sort of the integrity of wanting to make cinema that I wanted to work with her just from talking to her. Sometimes you find that special connection with somebody and you're going to be a partner for me. And one of the things that I loved so much about her, she's Ukrainian and she had this incredible European sensibility. So on our film, which was quite low budget and strapped for resources, and we had a day once where the main actor in a particular scene couldn't show up because he got suddenly sick, and we were going to have to make up something brand new on that day. And when I explained to her 6 a.m. in the morning, I said, Helena, I'm about to go into the trailer with the actors we do have. I'm going to write something new and we're going to figure out what to do. She got so excited and she said, oh, you mean we're going to shoot it in the European style? Meaning that she was so interested in the idea of finding something in the moment or rising to a challenge, not a challenge because there was something difficult, but a challenge in the sense of working with what is around you to transcend the circumstance and turn it into art. And that was the thing that I just loved so much about her and was really looking forward to see how she was going to grow as an artist. There was no way to get her to compromise on a single shot in your movie. She was going to make it beautiful and fight to get a little extra time or a little extra of whatever she needed. And it was just wonderful to be able to collaborate with somebody like that.
Mm. Well, Adam Egypt Mortimer, it's a terrible tragedy, but thank you very much for your memories of Helena Hutchins and working with her. And we can also talk now to the Australian actor Rhys Muldoon, who's used guns on set many times. Rhys Muldoon, thanks so much for being with us. Do you have any idea what could have gone wrong here on this movie set?
Well, yeah, sadly I do. Obviously it's absolute speculation at this time. But if we remember the Brandon Crowe incident where it was a blank that misfired and some of the projectile came out. So there's not, in a blank, there's not actually a bullet in the bullet, if that makes sense. But there's still an explosion. And if the metal casing comes out of the bullet, that's what got Brandon Crowe. And I have to say, I mean, it sounds like a very similar case. And using blanks is always difficult because not just on movie sets, but obviously, if you talk about real warfare and real guns often misfire. And I've just been recently working on a movie that had a lot of gunfire, like a very high range of gunfire. And I remember the day that the producers actually held a very clearly important meeting and decided to do away with blanks altogether and use SF, basic special effects and CGI, because you can get all of those, you really truly can in this day and age get those things of a gun firing without losing anything. I mean, like realism is everything in cinema and art, but in this shot, my guess is what it sounds like. The first thought that I had on this is that this is a close-up of a gun being fired by the actor very close to the frame of the camera, like either, but very close because you want the eye line and the very close. That is misfired, that has hit the DOP, and then either, because now hearing that the director as well has been hurt, either something's come off the French flag or the black box of the like a part of the camera, or diverted and hit the director as well, because normally the director doesn't stand right next to the DOP. That's sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But in this case, it sounds like they did. But just the thing of blanks when you're actually using actual explosives that close to a face is, I just feel for everybody on that set, firstly, because the amount of directors that I've spoken to, the amount of actors, the amount of showbiz is like when you go and make a film or you go and make something, you have this strange, weird, dysfunctional family that comes together to make something, and you just, you work hard, you love each other. And so I can't even imagine the pain on that set. But the thing of, the price for realism sometimes is just too high. Is that little bit of the flash from the gun that important? I don't know. And like I say, that's where my mind went with that. When I hear that an actor when the DOP has been shot, that suggests to me a big close up, if I don't know if you can see that on the frame, but like that kind of shot. It's so horrific. And I think that, I do think that blanks will probably go the way of the horse and cart after this, because you've had it now with Brandon Lee, and you've now had it on the recent film Rust, and it's tragic, and it's also, I'd have to say too, it's some systemic. I have no idea who would be to blame for that, because everything that I've ever worked on, every armourer is so careful and so precise, and they're, everything on the film I recently made, even my plastic gun, like my pretend gun, I had to sign out, sign in every day, like every moment is so carefully done. So that's why this particular case is so incredibly baffling. So I just hope that the inquiry is, really thorough, because it makes a big difference.
Rhys, thank you so much for your time and talking us through all the mechanics of how a film set does work in terms of the use of guns. Rhys Muldoon there, an actor who's done a lot of work with guns, as he was telling us. Well, let's get the very latest from the CBS News correspondent Laura Podesta, who can join us from New York. And well, an absolute tragedy. Do we know any more about the circumstances of what happened and how it could have happened?
Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know what led up to this stunt going horribly wrong. Yesterday, it happened around 1:50 in the afternoon, Mountain Time, and the two who were injured were immediately rushed to the hospital. Director Joel Souza survived. He has been discharged from the hospital at this hour. That's according to an overnight tweet by one of the stars in the movie. But again, we don't know what was in the gun, as that gentleman who was just describing. Was it a blank that discharged in a way that was able to kill someone, or was potentially live ammunition put into this gun? Our affiliate in Los Angeles has been speaking with experts Hollywood weapons experts. And one man, Bill Davis, mentioned that in Western films, in these historical films, a lot of times real firearms are used, but what's fake about it is what is put inside the firearm. So what was put inside this gun, we don't know at this point. That's going to be part of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office investigation. They're, of course, going to be interviewing Alec Baldwin. Now that the director has been discharged from the hospital overnight, perhaps they'll be talking to him and everyone else who was on the set that day. The armorer, of course, the person who's in charge of the weapons on the set, too.
And just tell us a bit more about Halyna Hutchins, the woman who was killed, an up-and-coming cinematographer, we're told, extremely talented.
So tragic. She was originally from Ukraine. She worked as an investigative journalist on British documentary productions prior to working in film. According to her website, it said that she was selected as one of American cinematographers' rising stars in 2019. You know, there's an outpouring on social media now talking about what a wonderful person she was, what an artist she was, what an eye she had. On her own social media, she had pictures and videos of riding horses in the days prior to this tragic accident. So clearly she was enjoying her time in New Mexico when she wasn't working on the film Rust.
All right, for now, Laura, thank you very much indeed. Laura Podesta there from CBS News.
Thanks.
Other news now, and there is a warning that a tsunami of people in England who rely on social care will be unable to access support this winter unless a staffing shortage is addressed. A report from the Care Quality Commission says the workforce is exhausted and depleted, with care providers already having to turn away patients. It says that urgent action has to be taken to get through the next few months safely. Well, yesterday, the government announced an extra £162 million to boost the adult social care workforce. Here's our social affairs editor, Alison Holt.
Unmet need of which today's report warns is already a reality for the cooks. Melvin has a rare brain condition and unable to get any support. Dorothy is caring on her own.
He can't get out of a chair on his own. He can't mobilise on his own. He can't go up and down the stairs on his own. He can't wash, dress, shower. Take your time. It's just full on 24/7 caring.
Melvin was sent home by the NHS in June. For a short time, care workers came in, then they said they didn't have enough staff to continue. That was 12 weeks ago. According to the Charity Carers UK, many family carers are being pushed to the edge, like Dorothy.
I'm on my knees. I'm on my knees with exhaustion. The strain of having to do it all on our own. We're left here with nobody. There's no care package, no accessibility to services. We feel completely and utterly isolated and scared.
Today's report from the regulator, the Care Quality Commission, warns of the serious impact staffing shortages are having across the health and care system in England. Job vacancies in care homes have risen from 6 to 10% in 5 months, and nursing homes are deregistering because they can't get nurses. It concludes urgent action is needed.
We're calling for, in our report, increased funding to stabilise the adult social care workforce. And that benefits everybody, has a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect right across health and social care. And without that stability, without that stable adult social care workforce, there's the real risk of a tsunami of unmet need, causing instability right across the system.
The government has said it is putting £162 million into boosting the recruitment and retention of care staff, and that it appreciates their dedication and tireless work.
You know, for many years this has been a workforce that's under incredible pressure, but of course that is intensified at this time, particularly as we have 1.1 million vacancies. There's a lot of competition for labour, so it is a worry, and that's why we've announced this £162.5 million today, which is there to effectively retain and to build extra capacity, and also to bring in thousands of new people.
Whilst welcoming the money, councils and care organisations say it won't be enough. Alison Holt, BBC News.
The assisted dying bill, which would allow terminally ill patients to seek assistance to end their lives, is to be debated again in Parliament today. If it's passed, it would enable adults of sound mind with less than 6 months to live to be provided with life-ending medication. Well, I'm joined now by Baroness Meacher, who has proposed the assisted dying bill, and also I'm joined by Dr. Gillian Wright, who's written an open letter to the Health Secretary opposing it, and that has been signed by 1,700 doctors. Baroness Meacher, can I come to you first of all? Just outline to us why you're proposing this bill.
Because the current law, which goes back to 1961, prevents anyone helping a dying person to take their lives, even if they're suffering completely unbearably and are pleading and pleading for help to bring their suffering to an end. And the sort of suffering that I think is important to illustrate, somebody might have a fungating wound coming through the cheek, for example, exuding the most appalling odour. Doctors say that clears the ward. All the other patients have to move out, but that dying person can't get away from it. Another might be vomiting constantly day and night, and because they're allergic to antiemetics, the palliative care services unfortunately can't help them. Certain people with motor neurone disease, as they gradually lose every conceivable capacity to move any bit of their body, will want desperately to get out of their body that doesn't mean anything to them anymore, and so on. And of course, there's uncontrollable pain. Our opponents say we can control pain. Cancer specialists have written to me saying that is simply not true. There are cancer patients who suffer terrible pain and we can't control it. So the current law needs desperately to be changed. In my view, no civilized society should allow people to suffer in this way without just enabling them to help themselves to bring their suffering to an end.
Dr. Gillian Wright, what is your answer to that? People suffering unbearably, says Baroness Meacher, and some very vivid examples there.
Absolutely, and our hearts go out to families and patients who've had distressing symptoms like these, but we consider that we should respond as a society to look after patients who are in those situations, that there should be a real drive, a response to excellent and high quality palliative care, better research for medication that can help these situations. And the response should not be that we help patients take their lives. And the prohibition of killing is one of the fundamentals of civilization. And it is incredibly important that we don't minimize the shift from preserving life to taking life. And doctors up and down the country are horrified that medicine might change in this way, and that we might be required to tell patients who are coming with a terminal diagnosis to say that the state would help them to take their own life. It devalues ordinary, frail human life, and we're not prepared to take part in that.
Baroness Meacher, the point is that in a civilised society, everything is about preserving life, not taking life, and a need for more palliative care. What do you say to that?
We strongly support the best possible palliative care. Absolutely we do, along with everybody else. And in Oregon, that have had this law for 22 years, the hospice movement were against the law before it came in. Now they're very keen on it because they say it has improved palliative care, because now doctors and nurses have really good, honest conversations with patients about those patients' fears and their wishes. And the palliative care services can do much more for patients because of this openness. In this country, death is a taboo. You almost don't talk about it. And so that's my answer to that. And in other countries like Australia that have now had assisted dying, very similar to the bill we're introducing here, they too have invested vastly in palliative care. So they've got better palliative care services alongside assisted dying. And in fact, the Association of Cancer Physicians, in their wonderful book, very balanced, they come down one side or the other, they say there is no reason why top quality palliative care and assisted dying shouldn't go along side by side without any competition between the two. That is cancer specialists talking. And now we have 50% of doctors wanting this bill to pass, 39% against. That is a huge shift in the medical profession over the last 5 years, because the profession are more open about the fact that these terrible, terrible deaths are occurring in a small minority of cases. We're not talking about many people here. We're talking about less than 1% of deaths. A patient may have an assisted death, obviously only if they're determined to have that death. This is not about doctors taking somebody's life. That is not what we are introducing here. Some countries have laws like that. We are not proposing that here.
Dr. Gillian Wright, it's not about taking life.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, because one of the examples that Baroness Meacher cited was motor neuron disease, and that would be helped by this legislation. But actually, a limited measure such as she has proposed in the House of Lords wouldn't meet the needs of most patients with motor neuron disease, because they don't have sufficient swallow and hand function. And so therefore, what's happened in Canada is very similar legislation has been extended within 5 years.
Doctor, it's different.
Please, please let me finish. So it has been extended in the last 5 years, and so now it is able to include those who are physically ill, and in 2 years' time those who are mentally ill as well. So what you will have in one side of a hospital is a suicide prevention programme, and then on the other side of the hospital you'll have doctors who are helping patients take their own lives. So we're critically concerned that there is extensive evidence from other countries that this actually leads to the devaluing of life, and it is incredibly weak law that has been proposed.
Can I respond to that? Because that is simply not as things are. In Canada, there was a Supreme Court judgment that said that somebody who was suffering unbearably, who was not terminally ill, it was contrary to their human rights not to be allowed to take their life. The Parliament over there said, look, we're not going to go all the way with the Supreme Court immediately. We're going to introduce a more limited law. If that works, we will then extend it. Canada is a very special case because assisted dying was led by a Supreme Court judgment that went beyond terminal illness. So it is quite wrong to suggest there is no evidence of any jurisdiction that starts with Parliament deciding on assisted dying as we are proposing, very narrow, very modest proposal, then moving to something broader. And it is terribly wrong to pretend, and I'm sorry, and misrepresent the situation in Canada, which is entirely different because it was driven by a Supreme Court judgment.
OK, well, you both had your say on that. Gillian Wright, can I just ask you, where it has been introduced assisted dying, it hasn't been reversed. I mean, we heard the example of Oregon, I think 22 years. It hasn't been changed, it hasn't been reversed. Does that not suggest that when it is introduced, it seems to work, or the society there seems to think that it is acceptable?
I think that's a very interesting point. I think many people do not know the consequences of assisted dying in different countries. And I was actually really interested to find out an example such as Belgium. Earlier in the year I was reading, they assessed what had happened in assisted dying over the case of 10 years between 2002 and 2012. And they looked at the numbers for those who had assisted dying, and they include both assisted suicide and euthanasia. But they found that 1 in 4 patients actually had assisted dying with no consent. And so I guess we're concerned that there would be a coarsening of attitudes. They were patients who were elderly, they were frail, and they were in coma. And you can see that in one situation, if doctors become familiar with the fact that they start taking life in one situation, it becomes acceptable in another. And we're incredibly concerned that that would be the case. OK,
Baroness Meacher, just come back on that, because you were rolling your eyes when Gillian Wright talked about Belgium.
Belgium have always had a very broad bill. There are several countries in Europe that do, including people who don't have mental capacity and so on. But we cannot pretend that they are relevant to this country. We are not proposing such a bill. And in Oregon, as you say, the bill has remained with exactly those restrictions for 22 years, and Britain will do the same. We will not go down the route of Belgium, and I really do ask the doctor, please, doctor, don't misrepresent what is happening, because it doesn't help anybody. It confuses people.
Gillian Wright, can I just come back to you on something you said earlier on, which is actually what we need to do is improve palliative care. The problem is, in both the National Health Service and social care in this country, we know that resources are so stretched. Staff shortages as well, massive staff shortages in both the NHS and in social care. So isn't that in some ways sort of dreamland when you're talking about much improved palliative care as an alternative to this?
I would be really concerned if you thought that we should be having assisted dying because it was cost effective. I think that would be very concerning. Well, I think it's really important. I was talking to an oncologist, and palliative care is a really important resource, and it is incredibly it's straightforward to resource in terms of people, but what you need to do is to improve access. GPs need more resources, hospices need more resources. So the NHS...
But that's the point, isn't it? You're talking about more resources. I mean, of course, no one's making the point that assisted dying should be brought in because it's cost effective, but I'm just saying you're talking about palliative care as an alternative, but I'm just saying, you know, are there the resources there? Are those resources available in an NHS and social care sector that are so desperately hard pressed?
I think there's a wisdom in terms of allocation of resources. I think we need to decide what our priorities, and I think what we do need to listen to is this debate is that there are sometimes relatively inexpensive interventions that can make a huge difference to people, but I think they require a bit of imagination, of coordination of care, of different ways of looking at care, with a real drive that that is improving care. So it needn't all just simply be finance. It needs a whole attitude that disabled and vulnerable, terminally ill patients are priorities, and we need to look after them. OK,
Baroness Meacher, last word to you. It needs a change in attitude.
Finally, I can agree with the doctor on something. We definitely do need to invest more in palliative care in this country. And that is what has happened in countries that have introduced assisted dying. They invest more in palliative care. So on that, we can agree. And the fact is, the people who would have an assisted death are very small in number, less than 1% of deaths. There will not be a change in culture because of that. At last, people who suffer most dreadfully before they die will have relief. That is the change that will happen.
Baroness Meacher and Dr. Gillian Wright, I know very strongly held opinions on both sides of the debate, but thank you so much for debating your points of view with us this morning here on BBC News. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And just a reminder that if you do need help or advice regarding any of the areas involved in that issue and the discussion we've just been having, and issues such as bereavement, emotional distress, support for carers, there are links on our BBC Action Line website. Right, we're going to get an update on all the latest sports news for you at the BBC, even BBC Sports Centre, something like that. Anyway, Mike Bushell is there for us. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, hi Ben, you're spot on actually. And what a time it is for Scottish cricket, and Scotland are now promising to shake up cricket's elite even more by causing further upsets after they reached the main draw of the T20 World Cup for the first time in their history by beating Oman pretty comfortably as well in a winner-takes-all final qualification match, as Nesta McGregor now reports.
Scotland believed winning this game could inspire a new generation, a team unified in their quest for a third victory and unified against discrimination. Oman at home wanted a good start. That's easier said than done though. A moment of miscommunication. This run out came with just a single run on the board. But then stepped forward Aqib Elias to settle those nerves. Scotland soon had their revenge. Elias out for 37. Oman bravely fought on, at times hitting and raising the roof. Chasing 1-2-3, Scotland made it look as easy as, well, ABC. George Munsey finding the boundary. When he went, captain Kyle Coetzer went big. Humongous! Coetzer fell for 41, but Scotland eased to the win and a place in the Super 12s alongside cricket's biggest names. Nesta McGregor, BBC News.
Yeah, the former New Zealand player and commentator there saying it rather nicely, humongous, to describe one of the big Scottish hits. Now, one of the team then are so full of confidence going into the Super 12 stage, having won their qualifying group now.
I don't think we need to do anything else different. You know, we've won 3 out of 3, beating top 6 nation Bangladesh, so I don't think we need to change anything. Maybe if anything, Bangladesh need to change a few things because they've struggled in this group, like we knew they would. Associate cricket's tough, and I think we just need to keep doing what we're doing.
Well, Ireland can join Scotland in the Super 12 stage. If they can beat Namibia today, that gets underway at 11 o'clock. That's followed at 3 o'clock by Sri Lanka versus the Netherlands. A win for Sri Lanka would ensure they top the qualifying group. Commentary of both games on BBC Radio 5 Live Sports Extra, which is on air from 10:45 a.m. Then the main stage, the two Super 12s, when of course England are involved against West Indies, starts tomorrow. Now, in football, teams will be fearing West Ham, it seems, as they march on unbeaten in their Europa League group. They beat Genk 3-0, Jarrod Bowen with the third and arguably the best goal on the night for the Hammers. So the knockout phase beckons for them, with the Hammers comfortable at the top of their group and yet to concede a goal as well. Rangers have revived their hopes of reaching the knockout stages with a 2-0 win against the Danish side Brøndby. At Ibrox, Leon Balogun scoring his first goal for the club. Manager Steven Gerrard was full of praise. He said it was close to a perfect performance. Tottenham, though, may be regretting giving their main stars a rest for their latest Europa Conference match after losing 1-0 to the Dutch side Vitesse. Maximilian Vitek scoring the only goal of the game in the second half. Spurs had left out key players like Harry Kane and Son Heung-min. The defeat now leaves them at third in Group G. So a tough 8 matches in his career. Andy Murray is also annoyed, but with himself. He says his attitude was poor on court as he lost in the second round of the European Open in Antwerp. Opponent Diego Schwartzman said it was a pleasure to play against Murray, who is one of his idols, but still beat him 6-4, 7-6. And Great Britain won 3 medals on the second day of the Track Cycling World Championships in France. Josie Knight, Nia Evans, Megan Barker and Katie Archibald claimed the final medal of the night for Britain. They comfortably beat Canada there by 5.5 seconds to reach the third place and claim the bronze in their women's team pursuit. The men's pursuit team and Rhys Britton in the scratch race also won bronze. There we go, that's all the sport for now. Back to you, Ben.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you very much. A new nationwide advertising campaign is being launched to encourage more people to come forward for COVID booster vaccines and the winter flu jab. It comes amid growing calls for the government to reintroduce some restrictions in England to slow the spread of the virus and to protect the NHS. Yesterday, more than 50,000 COVID cases were recorded in the United Kingdom for the first time since the middle of July. So let's get some analysis of all of that from Dr. Deepti Gurdasani, clinical epidemiologist and senior lecturer at Queen Mary University. Thanks for being with us once again. And those case figures yesterday, 52,000, how worried are you by the rising case numbers?
I'm very worried. I mean, we're seeing higher than 50,000 cases heading into winter. We're not even in winter yet. There are significant pressures on the NHS. I mean, the cases are sadly translating into hospitalizations and deaths, even if they are lower than they would have been without vaccination. We are seeing about 1,000 deaths every week and about 1,000 hospitalizations every day. And we're hearing from, the British Medical Association that they're really, really struggling and are very, very overstretched. And this is not a good situation to be in ahead of winter.
Although we're told a lot of those cases, maybe as many as half, are school children, and actually that maybe the half-term break might bring a reduction in case numbers.
Yes, I mean, case rates in children are at an all-time high. We know from the Office for National Statistics that 1 in 12 secondary school age children are infected, and unfortunately that infection has predictably flown back into the community. And now cases are rising across all age groups, including the 60+ age group, which is most vulnerable. I think half-term break will help, but I think there need to be serious plans for what happens after half term that need to be implemented within half term. So we know, for example, that only 18% of adolescents in England have received a first dose compared to 50% in Scotland. And we also know that we don't have any mitigations in schools apart from rapid testing of adolescents. So, unless we bring back things like masks, put in ventilation, bring back bubbles, contact tracing in schools, which is not happening right now, we are sadly going to be in the same position after half term, which we absolutely cannot afford.
What about changing the regime for the third booster jab? It has to be 6 months after your first 2 jabs. A lot of talk about maybe bringing that forward, making it something like 5 months to get more people having the booster. Would that make sense?
I think absolutely. The problem with the booster rollout hasn't been that people aren't coming forward. It's been, the rollout has been really chaotic and eligible people haven't been contacted. That's been the problem. In countries like Singapore, you have to have your booster before the 6 months rather than what we're having right now. But the problem is, the difficulty in access rather than, uptake from people. And the government really needs to sort that out quickly.
OK, Dr. Deepti Gurdasani, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The Royal Cornwall Hospitals Trust has declared a critical incident because the pressures it is facing. The Trust reported up to 100 people were waiting to be seen in A&E on Wednesday, a department with 40 beds. Families, friends and neighbours were urged to contact the hospital if they could help somebody waiting for home care leave the ward early. Now to Australia, where the search for a 4-year-old girl who went missing from a campsite north of Perth on Saturday has now been called off by police. Officers say they believe that Cleo Smith, who disappeared from a remote campsite almost a week ago, has been abducted. Joining us now with the very latest is our correspondent, Phil Mercer. So tell us a bit more about this case and why has the search been called off?
Well, it's almost 7 days now, Ben, since Cleo Smith went missing, and the police believe that she was asleep in the tent that her family was staying in, that about 1:30 a.m. last Saturday morning local time, her mother saw Cleo asleep in a separate room of the tent next to the cot occupied by her younger sister. At 6 a.m. when the family got up, Cleo was missing, and the police believe that the tent had been unzipped and Cleo was taken away. So almost exactly a week later, the police say that this search at the campsite about 540 miles to the north of Perth will be suspended, and what they're looking at now is to get security vision from businesses within a 500-mile radius of this campsite. So now the inquiry is spanning a vast area of Western Australia and beyond.
And this is a story that has gripped the Australian media.
The Western Australian police say that this disappearance of a 4-year-old child really strikes at the heart of the Western Australian community. These sorts of stories are very rare in Australia, so when they do occur, they do make headline news, and it has brought many volunteers to join this exhaustive air and sea search at this campsite so far to the north of Perth in Western Australia, the police being supported not only by community volunteers but also defence reservists as well and private helicopters. But so far, no sign of Cleo Smith has been found, despite one of the biggest searches that Western Australia has seen in recent times.
Phil, thank you very much indeed. Phil Mercer reporting there for us from Sydney. Now here, there is a warning that a tsunami of people in England who rely on social care will be unable to access support this winter unless a staffing shortage is addressed. A report from the Care Quality Commission says the workforce is exhausted and depleted, with care providers already having to turn away patients. It says urgent action must be taken to get through the next few months safely. Well, yesterday the government did announce an extra £162 million to boost the adult social care workforce. We can talk now to Anita Astle, MBE, who's the Director of National Care Association and Managing Director at the Wren Hall Nursing Home. Thank you very much for being with us. Just tell us about the staffing shortages. We read a lot of stories about people going off to other jobs, retail, hospitality, that are essentially paying them more. Is it just the money, or is it that they are fed up with the workload that they're having to go through in care homes? Oh, well, I don't think we've got Anita Astle, actually. She seems to have frozen in our screen, so I'm sorry about that. We will try to get back to her just as soon as we can. In fact, maybe she is there. Oh, yes, she can. Anita, thank you so much for being with us. Let me just ask you, why are so many people leaving the care home sector, do you think?
There's many reasons. They've just been through 18 months of a pandemic, like everyone, but where many people were furloughed and at home, our staff were all working through the pandemic. Many of them were caught affected by COVID. And then many of them were working short-staffed because many of their colleagues were affected by COVID. And then we've had, there was blame apportioned on care staff for COVID entering care homes. There was blame when we were told that we needed to do advanced care plans for people, and then do not resuscitate orders were put in place, and then we were criticised about that. And then care staff have been mandated to have vaccines when their colleagues in the NHS haven't been mandated, so they're aggrieved about that. And then obviously we've got the impact of Brexit, people, Eastern Europeans leaving the country, and so vacancies across all work roles. And other work sectors paying more. So, lots of reasons why people are leaving the care sector, and we need to redress that quickly.
Well, how do we address that? I mean, a government minister today, earlier this morning, Care Minister Gillian Keegan was ruling out the idea of allowing more social care workers to come in from abroad. But would that be the easiest and the quickest way?
One way, but it's about time that care professionals, that's what our care staff are, they are professionals, are recognised for the complexity of the job that they do. Many people think that they just white bottoms, but they do far more than that. They give emotional support, they give physical support, and that is both physically and emotionally draining on them themselves. And so it's about time we recognise the value and showed the value of these workers and paid them realistic wages. I think it's shocking that they can go and stack shelves in a supermarket, they can drive a vehicle, and they can get paid significantly more sums.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually reading that, for example, they can get £3 or £4 an hour more going to work for somebody like Amazon, and that's what they are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we get so much criticism that our workers are absolutely exhausted. The CQC report uses that word, saying that people are exhausted. So they are exhausted, and they do need, support, well-being support. That is very difficult to come by. And so there's lots that we can do to show our care professionals how much we value them. But until we do that, we will continue to lose them.
Anita, thank you very much for your time. Anita Assel there, Director of the National Care Association. Now, pop superstar Ed Sheeran is going to be following in the footsteps of people like Dolly Parton, Elton John and Orlando Bloom, and become the latest famous face to read a bedtime story on the children's channel CBeebies. He's going to be reading a book about a little boy with a stammer, a speech disorder that the singer also struggled with when he was a child.
Hello, my name's Ed. When I was little, I had a stutter. And that means when I spoke, sometimes the words got a bit stuck on the way out. And it made me feel different. Because, I'd be in school and the teacher would ask a question that I would know the answer to, and I'd put my hand in the air, and then when it came to my turn to answer, I couldn't get the words out. And I used to worry that I'd never be able to speak without stuttering. But now I sing and I talk to people all the time, sometimes to lots of people. Perhaps you have a stutter too, or you know someone who does. Well, tonight's bedtime story is just for you. It's about a little boy who has a stutter, just like I did. It's called I Talk Like a River, and it's by Jordan Scott and Sydney Smith.
Well, Jordan Scott is the author of I Talk Like a River, which Ed just mentioned, and he says that he hopes the decision to share the experience of people who stammer will bring greater empathy from those who do not.
Well, as a child, I still I stuttered. I struggled quite a lot, and I still stutter today. It's a big part of my life, and in this book, I wanted to share that a gift of my father's story that he gave me when he told me that the way that I talk, the way that I stutter, it is like the river. That changed my life. It allowed me to see my stutter as natural, where oftentimes stuttering is seen as unnatural. I think there's more people talking about stuttering. For me, I've experienced that as an adult, more people than when I was a child. I think people, as they gain a better understanding of stuttering, I have definitely noticed more patience and empathy.
That's Jordan Scott, who's the author of the book I Talk Like a River, which Ed Sheeran is going to be reading on CBeebies. OK, we're going to pause and take a look at the latest weather prospects for you now, and they come today from Nick Miller.
Hello, the day's got off to a fairly chilly start in that brisk northwesterly wind. Now, the wind will ease later today, but the winds will pick up again over the weekend. We do have a little ridge of high pressure moving in. Still plenty of showers around in the day ahead. Frontal system out towards the west will bring some rain into the weekend, especially across western areas. We'll look at the weekend weather in a moment. We have to get through Friday first of all. Increasing sunshine across northeast Scotland and the Northern Isles as the day goes on. Elsewhere, there'll be a lot of cloud around and these showers on this west-northwesterly wind, a few pushing in towards southern England on through the afternoon. These are average wind speeds, still getting some gusts in excess of 30 miles an hour or so, but overall the wind will be showing signs of easing as the day goes on. Single-figure temperatures across much of the north and east of Scotland, though for many of us were around 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. Now into tonight, it will turn quite chilly across eastern parts where it's largely dry. There'll be some clear spells, although also some patches of mist and fog, and the wind falls light. The breeze starts to pick up in the west, and there will be one or two showers dotted around here as the night goes on, keeping temperatures up, whereas across eastern parts a touch of frost on the ground and maybe frost in the air across parts of Scotland as we get close to freezing going into tomorrow morning. With a frontal system coming from the west, that brings some rain and freshening winds over the weekend, but also wind change to a southerly southwesterly means temperatures are going to be heading a few degrees back up again. So a mixture of cloud and a few bright or sunny spells as we go on through Saturday. We will see some patchy rain towards Scotland, Wales, western parts of England, Northern Ireland. And for Northern Ireland and western Scotland, that rain turning heavier and more persistent as we get on through the afternoon. And the winds will pick up again. In fact, for the Western Isles, we could see some gusts around 50-55 miles per hour. Temperatures, though, creeping up. It will still feel quite cool across eastern parts after a chilly start with that chance of a touch of frost. And once any early mist and fog patches have cleared away, turning milder in the west and milder for all on Sunday. We will see a weather system gradually pushing further eastwards, taking a few showers as we go on through the day. Further showers reaching western Scotland and Northern Ireland into the afternoon, with a few sunny spells here as well. A milder day on Sunday. It'll be another windy one out there.
There are many movies out at the moment that are claiming to be comedies. This beats all of them. And on the one hand, it's a political tale. On the other hand, it is a magic realist fable. It is baggy and overlong. You can either just see it as a really good popcorn adventure or as something much deeper. That's what a proper cult movie looks like. My problem with it is I wanted it to be darker. The script is laughable, but not in a good way. This has proved so divisive. I was reminded of the friendship between Elliot and E.T. Every time anyone says mockumentary, immediately think, is it as good as Spinal Tap? The answer is no. Very smartly reinvented a franchise, and who thought that was possible? It does the thing that cinema is meant to do at its very best, to completely immerse you, to transport you, to take you to another world.
Words of Wisdom, the film review, today at 5:45 on the BBC News Channel.
He wants tomorrow's news today. She's broadening her horizons. He's growing his knowledge. They're searching for expert opinions. She's dying for a lively discussion. He's taking stock of the situation. She wants to dive deeper. They just need a conversation starter. Everyone's news all in one place. The Papers, tonight at 10:30 and 11:30 on the BBC News Channel.
A different perspective on the week's news.
The figures are way below what is reality.
Given by correspondents with real insight.
They don't want democracy, they want an Islamic state.
A global view of the biggest stories. Dateline London, tonight at 7:30 on the BBC News Channel and on BBC iPlayer.